This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Viterbi Voices. My name is Paul Ledesma, one of your hosts. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Audrey Roberts. I am a senior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
Audrey, this is 200 episodes.
Yes, a big number. Although it feels like 100 wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't. You got up to 100 fast. You got up to 200 faster than we got up to the first 100. It's amazing. 200 episodes. I can't believe we've done 200 episodes.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy to think there's that much out there, but hopefully they've been helpful to people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming we have, at least one person who's listened to all 200 listening out there right now. I think we've got a super fan or two in there. And so I am so appreciative of everyone that listens to this. I hope that it always finds people, in the admission process, learn a little bit more about the school, get some more insight in a different format than just brochures and websites and stuff like that. But Audrey, what are your thoughts that we're turning this corner and going into the next 100 here? What are your thoughts on the podcast in general and how it started with you, and now you're just a pro? And
yeah, I was kind of thinking about this. So I was texting with Rhea, who is the interviewee on this episode, the host before me, kind of coordinating this episode. And I was like, oh, we're just recording on Zoom. She was like, do I need to download anything? And I was like, no, just Zoom. So I think that's kind of one big change, of course, as previously we had, pretty professional level mics and all this equipment. And it was like a little complex to sort of get started and get recording.
Yeah. All that stuff's still in my office. It's just been sitting there.
Yeah. So I think that's obviously one change is the nature of the recording, but I was sort of thinking about next year too, when we go, I'm graduating. So when we go with our new host, I do think we can take some of these elements going forward, even if we are able to come back and record in person, just because, we can get, I feel like, more people on the podcast via Zoom. They don't necessarily have to be in LA. I think it's easier to schedule. So I definitely see that as something that can go forward, whether it's a portion of an episode or just some episodes recorded via Zoom. I think it's a great tool. And then just in terms of stories, I think, I'm definitely kind of every week running into an issue where, we have made so many episodes on so many different topics. It's kind of like, what are we going to talk about this week? But I think having a new perspective on that will be great. And I'd love to just continue to highlight more people. I think, I've definitely leaned on kind of my friends and my network, just as the nature of that's the people who I know to get connected with for episodes. So I'm excited going forward to sort of bring more different people on the podcast.
I think you're totally right. It's interesting, like what we built the podcast up to logistically and kind of all the hardware that is sitting unused. And I think about it probably every couple weeks, like, should I go get that? But then it'd just be like, I'd have that giant board, like, and I like basically like where my arms are right now, like in the width of the screen, this is my desk. This is all I need. But if I bring that board is just as big as this desk.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to go get that board? Do I want to get that mic? And I don't think I do. I keep deciding against it. But I feel bad that we're not using it. And then, but you're right. The other thing is like the minimizing of stuff like schedules and calendars and Zoom to get more content is great. Speaking of which, when we stop recording, remind me, I have an idea of something we can record next week-ish that I think is a cool new idea. But I want to get your thoughts before I go public with it. We've had God, we had Kelly as the first host. We had Alex as the second host. We had Rhea, right after that.
Mhm.
And then you're the fourth host.
Yeah.
And you've done more episodes, I've said this multiple times, than anyone else. And so
Well,
congratulations.
a lot of help from everyone. So thank you
Well,
to
yeah, absolutely. You have a
me.
strong team. I'm super excited that we already know who the next host is. We're not saying anything about it now. It's kind of a
Yeah.
secret, but we know who is that season 6? Is this season 5?
No, this is season 6. That's season 7.
I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Okay, this is season 6. So season 6, and we've already got the host for season 7 lined up, waiting in the wings.
Yes.
And that person is excited to do this, and I'm excited to bring them on at some point in the next couple months. And I just congratulations to you, and thank you to you for maintaining what has become, what started out as a, hey, what if we did this? What a cool idea that would be, to now kind of the rock solid core of everything that we do. Like, well, we got to make sure we have a podcast for that, or like, let's make sure our podcast is consistent, and you do that. So thank you very much for all people that are listening. Audrey is this podcast. She's the one that makes it run, and she deserves all the credit.
Oh
And we've
gosh.
gotten a lot of kudos lately from students emailing in, and one in particular came in last week, that a student was basically reaching out as they're going through like the transfer process. They're thinking about applying in as a transfer student. And this student is someone that is excited. You know, they applied as a first year student last year, but didn't get in, but they can't wait to apply as a transfer student this year. And he's been in a lot of communications with Angie on our admission team. And he specifically said, let them know that I love the Viterbi Voices podcast, and that I've been less stressed about applying ever since I started listening before the winter break. So kudos to you, Audrey, and everyone who does the work on this podcast. And there's a lot of people. Thank you for that. I'm excited for everyone to jump into this conversation and go back to hear what Rhea thinks of the growth of this time now that she's been in the real world a little bit.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we get into that?
I guess just thank you to all the listeners. I am glad to hear that it's helpful for people, and I definitely think lowering the stress level is one of my goals. So I'm glad to hear that's happened.
All right, well, let's get out of the way and check in with Rhea, our previous host, for a little retrospective for our 200th episode.
Well, welcome. Today I'm with Rhea, our former podcast, Viterbi Voices host. I guess just to get us started, do you mind introducing yourself? Rhea, really?
Sure,
As long as
yeah.
you want, actually.
Oh my goodness.
Whatever intro you want.
I can't use my little prepared Viterbi one anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets jarring sometimes. But hi guys. My name is Rhea. I was the former host of this podcast, but I graduated in May 2019, so almost 2 years ago. Crazy. But I studied biomedical engineering at Viterbi with a minor in healthcare studies, and my interests were all in sort of the medical device and the medical healthcare world. So I started working at Edwards Life Sciences right after graduation. I was part of their rotational program, which is 18 months, but 4 rotations of 4.5 months. So basically every 4.5 months, you change positions and you get a chance to kind of taste a lot of different types of engineering or marketing or clinical roles if you want. But you can pretty much run the gamut of different positions at Edwards, whatever you want to try. I really, really enjoyed it. I actually just finished that program, or graduated from that program last week. So this is my first official week as a full-time, just normal R&D engineer at Edwards, where I'm working in their critical care business unit, which are all the different products that go into monitoring patients in the ICU. So that's what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. Obviously, super relevant work right now as we head into year 2 of this pandemic. But I guess, yeah, just how are you? Like, how has your year been? How's 2021 started?
Well, 2021 has honestly been awesome so far. It's been really nice. It's like, except for the cold outside, not really feeling that. It's very cold in California right now, and I'm not about it. But besides that, 2021's been great. I went home for 2.5 weeks over Christmas break. So my family's in Northern California. So I got COVID tested before I drove up and saw them and stayed with them for sort of the full quarantine period and then a little bit longer. And that was really nice. It was great to just kind of be with family for a little bit, because with Edwards Life Sciences being a medical device and a healthcare company, I've been down here in Orange County going to work most of the time, which is really cool. It's very sort of validating to be in that position, because it does sort of reassure me that the work that we're doing is impactful and important and valuable to patients and valuable to people. So we do have the privilege of going into work, but as a result, I know a lot of my friends have sort of been taking advantage of just going back home and staying with family or working out of Hawaii or like whatever people have been doing, but I've still been coming into the office. So that was a very relaxing kind of way to kick off the new year. And then I came back here. I finished the last couple weeks of my rotation with a marketing and strategy group. And then I came back here and it's been really nice.
That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and I'm sure the listeners are too. I know
Yeah.
we had a big following. Big shoes for me to fill.
I'm honored.
But yeah, of course now we're recording remotely, so I'm kind of curious, just like that I was talking to Paul about this too, but it's sort of interesting. We had such a different setup before, and of course the podcast has kind of pivoted a little since then with the remote. Is it weird to be podcasting on Zoom?
It does feel weird. I mean, there were a couple of occasions where we had to sort of do a remote setup for the podcast before, but it was so kind of jerry-rigged and like haphazard, because I didn't even know what Zoom was until last year. So yeah. I had heard about it at some tech companies, but I didn't know what it did or how to use it or anything like that. And I still think it's like my technology Achilles heel. I'm so bad at Zoom. We use Microsoft Teams at work. But anyway, we used to use this software called Zencastr, which was like, it worked, but it definitely would sometimes mess with the audio because it depended not only on your computer's recording abilities, but the other person's computer recording abilities and microphone setup and everything as well. So you would never really know if you were getting a good quality recording until after the session. So it was always sort of trial and error to figure out if we were going to do that effectively. So it's so cool that these kinds of things have now popped up, and it's so easy to record and do these things remotely, because I imagine you can interview so many more people and access so many more different kinds of opinions and thoughts when you can reach literally anyone in the world. So that's really, really cool. I'm very jealous. I know our microphone setup was like, none of you guys saw it when we were recording the podcast, but it's a pretty intense setup. It's a lot of different mics, testing out different locations, kind of figuring out how to seat people. If you want to interview more than one person at a time, that's its own challenge, so you don't get crosstalk from the microphones. Right. It's definitely intense. So like, this is the easiest recording situation I could possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely, so we kind of, when we first went remote, we used Zencastr for a little bit, but I think, Zoom is just so easy, although I'm with you on being challenged with Zoom for something that feels so user-friendly. I don't think it is. So
no, right?
Engineering that needs some buttons that are clear.
They don't have time. They're too busy with managing all their downloads and everything and keeping up with their growth.
Yeah, exactly. But it does make recording a lot easier. And I think one thing we kind of had to, I'm sure anyone listening has probably noticed, we've kind of had to take a step back and not worry too much about audio quality here and there, just because it's not all in our control. So, but I think it's a good thing. It's been fun. So I guess you have been out in the real world for almost 2 years now, as you talked about, which is crazy that 2 years have passed. But you mentioned sort of at the beginning, you're in a rotational program at Edwards. Maybe can you chat a little bit about what that is? And I know initially a lot of the really cool part of it was getting to kind of travel with Edwards, and that of course had to pivot this year with the pandemic. So I'd love to hear more about that as well.
Sure. And this is really relevant to people that are interested in engineering but don't really know what engineering looks like in the real world. For me personally, I had one internship throughout college, the 2 summers, and it was the summer after my junior year. The 2 summers before that, I did 2 abroad programs actually through USC. So those were a lot of fun. But when it came to figuring out what kind of engineering positions I wanted to apply for, they weren't the most practical experiences to draw on because I didn't know what the difference was between, what manufacturing engineers do and quality engineers do and R&D engineers do. I knew what the descriptions were on paper, but I didn't really know like how that was different from their day-to-day positions. So rotational programs are amazing for that exact purpose because you essentially get a chance to try out different roles and see what works for you and see what fits. Edward's program specifically is really special because you get assigned your first rotation, but your second, third, and fourth rotations, you get to essentially pick whatever projects you want to do across the company. And you can pick different projects, different groups, different roles, really whatever fits the bill. In your second and third of the 4 rotations, you pick from sort of a list of managers whose projects have been cherry picked as business priorities. So it's 30 or so projects that 10 of us pick from. And then your fourth rotation, you get to source on your own and kind of talk to a lot of different groups and network around and figure out what is sort of left to round out your experience. So for me personally, my first rotation was in quality engineering. And quality engineering, to anyone who isn't familiar, is essentially making sure that all of our products are tested appropriately, fit all of the FDA guidelines with biomedical devices or medical devices or anything that's going to go into a patient or touch a patient. There's obviously a lot of rules and regulations. I know the FDA has been thrust to the forefront this year with vaccines and everything, and people are a little bit more familiar with this process, but there's a pretty extensive clearance process that devices have to go through before they go to market. So quality engineers are in charge of making sure every step along the way, as we change the design of devices, as we change the manufacturing style of devices, every step of it is following the rules and being documented appropriately and making sure that when it comes time to submit things to the FDA, they're perfectly and ready to go. So that's sort of what quality does in a nutshell. There's a lot of different flavors of it, whether devices are commercial or not, whether devices are being manufactured at a large scale or not, like all those different things tie into different types of quality, but that's sort of what it looks like in a nutshell. So I was working on this device that was a surgical assistive device. It was really, really cool. It was much more hands-on than I think quality tends to be. A lot of times quality gets a rep to be very documentation heavy. You're sort of reading a lot. You're reading a lot of other people's writings and kind of editing, and you get to be the bad guy. So I was a little bit nervous because I'm a very hands-on person. So I was nervous about how heavy that documentation side would be. But my boss was amazing. And she was super young and very cool. And she asked me immediately right out the gate, like, hey, what are you most interested in getting out of this experience? And I said, well, I want as much hands-on opportunities as I can and then go from there. So she sort of structured and tailored my projects to fit that bill. So I was doing a lot of risk management work, which is hands-on time in the lab. We went all the way to Boston to go do what we call a usability study, which is having physicians try out our product. We got to do things on the manufacturing line, lots of different things. So it was sort of a little taste of all sorts of different types of quality things. And it was a great time. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot too. My second rotation was R&D. It was also very, very cool. Without going into super detail on the product or the project, just for the sake of time, because I could talk about this forever. But like essentially what I was doing was creating a little benchtop testing system for one of our products. And this is actually the role that I ended up circling back to and joining full time because it's a project that I really loved and was really passionate about. And it's essentially like almost an academic lab research project because we're creating this bench for the first time and doing a lot of academic research and collaborations for it. But it's essentially to test one of our products and replace a very invasive clinical test that they do on humans right now. So it's a cool simulation type of thing. Third rotation was a clinical development role. And this one might be interesting to listeners that are a little bit more like med school inclined or interested in the hospital side of product development, because what I did as a clinical development engineer was sort of work at the intersection of R&D and then physician training. So what we did was design and create all of the training tools that doctors use in the hospital. Like, how do doctors get to know how to use a new medical device? They train on these different models. So the clinical development engineers are the ones that SolidWorks and design those models, which is really cool. They also help develop the surgical procedure for those products, which is also super awesome and something I never thought I would get to do as an engineer. Like, it's a really, really interesting position that works at a really cool intersection. They also go to cases, they proctor cases, which means they sort of watch over what the doctors are doing. There's a lot of case reviews. It's really, really interesting clinical facing work, and it's probably as close as you can get as an engineer to being in the field. Of course, like you mentioned, with the pandemic hitting right around that time, that rotation was probably one of the best things I could do because it was still so hands-on, because it was so clinically focused and hospital focused. I was coming into work every day still. So I got a chance to still sort of feel like I was being a part of the team and get the hands-on experience I wanted. I didn't get to travel and go to cases, which is normally part of that kind of a role too. But I still felt like I was getting a pretty good idea of what being with patients was like, which was very, very rewarding. I was initially going to be traveling for that rotation, and one of the main draws of this program was that they're very happy to do international placements for these engineers. So you can not only try different roles in our Irvine headquarters, but you can try different roles around the world. So I had been really, really excited to go travel to Tokyo to do a downstream marketing rotation, which was really just an opportunity to travel and live in Tokyo, but also a chance to see how Edwards markets its flagship products in international markets. We were clearing the China market for the first time. The Japan market was almost there. Like, there was a lot of different cool opportunities to learn there. But of course, pandemic, they put a stop to all the international rotations. So I was really lucky that the clinical development rotation opportunity came up, because I still got a chance to do things that were really hands-on. And my boss was absolutely amazing for that rotation too. She was super supportive and really great. My last rotation was my fourth rotation. Very interesting experience that was not traditional at all. Started as marketing and strategy for a software product that Edwards has. And then in the middle of the rotation, they sent a company-wide announcement, and my team was being spun out of the company into its own company. So essentially, like, this team of 35 or so people that worked on this product were being spun out and moved to a new company, which is, again, like, not normal. Edwards has never done that before. Actually, Edwards was started that way. We were spun out of a larger company called Baxter in 2000. So that was the last time something like this had happened. And they decided to do it with, of course, the team that I decided to rotate on. So my project shifted very quickly from, I was doing a project management role, basically. I was project managing this algorithm launch. So instead of doing that, I ended up doing more of a PM role to project manage our transition to a new company. So I was handling a lot of sort of data transfer, data migration, like renewing contracts, budget decisions, all sorts of different kind of admin roles, and also legal and budget, like I don't even know how to describe what I was doing, but it was essentially a master spreadsheet that I was constantly updating and figuring out, and making sure that this new startup had all the tools and resources and data to bring everything they had done at Edwards to this new company and still be able to have the ability to work on their products and have everything they needed. A very interesting situation, but also kind of a cool look at Startup 101 and how to set up a company and what goes into that process, which was very, very rare to get as an experience during a rotational program at a large company. So that's kind of the long story short of those 4 rotations. It was a really cool experience. I learned a lot in every single role, and I learned a lot about what kinds of products and projects I like to work on, which was really important as well, and is kind of one of the main takeaways you try to get out of these programs. So I ended up going back to my second rotation, which was R&D, working on that benchtop clinical replacement system.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. I have a couple questions.
Cool. Perfect.
So I'm curious, like, at the beginning, and obviously kind of there's a thread throughout all your rotations that you said you're working on like monitoring tools in an ICU or these sorts
Mhm.
of things that are obviously like super relevant right now. I mean, I think all of us kind of hear every day what
Mhm.
ICU capacity is, it's important for people infected with
Mhm.
coronavirus.
Yeah.
Like what sort of like immediacy did you feel to your work? Because I think as an engineer, and I think oftentimes in high school when we want to be engineers, like most of us hopefully
Mhm.
feel like some want to like do good, to like make a product
Yeah,
that impacts people in a positive way. Like, do you feel like you got that? And what was that
definitely.
like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the best things about working in healthcare in general, and it makes me so happy that I think that's finally getting more recognized and more widely understood as to how important and impactful the field of healthcare is from all sorts of angles, from engineering, from just practicing medicine and how important frontline health workers are, to health policy and like who gets to be vaccinated first. There's all these complex intersections to the world of healthcare. So I'm really, really excited that that is getting talked about more. I think for me personally, it was very cool to see at the beginning of the pandemic, the business unit that I'm working in now, our critical care monitoring systems business unit, um, all our products were getting used in the ICU for COVID patients all the time because that's how they monitor these critical patients. So it was super rewarding to just understand that, okay, that's not a product that I touched, but that is a product that our company makes and is actively helping people with, um, which was a really cool realization to come to. I think another thing that we were sort of talking about, like right before recording, was with Edwards Life Sciences being a medical device company, we have sort of governmental designation as an essential business. And that also is very validating in a way. Like it makes me think that people understand the gravity of what medical devices mean and what continuing innovation and research and work on them means to the greater community. And if we were to be shut down and everyone was working remotely for Edwards, who knows what would happen when the next kind of major health crisis rolls around and we don't have the tools to fight it. So that was really another kind of interesting moment to take a step back and be like, hey, this is awesome. Like, that feels like the work that I'm a part of, whether directly or indirectly, is something that is actually really important to people. It is also cool that now I can have very open conversations about it with pretty much everyone, because just by reading the news, everyone has a general fluency in
Yeah.
healthcare now, which is awesome. Because like I've been so into this for so long that like it's very cool to be able to have these kinds of conversations with just about anyone.
That's awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I guess going to your fourth rotation, you're kind of talking about like startup 101. I
Hmm.
sort of the skills you were describing, kind of marketing, like more like administrative operations stuff. I don't
Hmm.
feel like that stuff we really like. Well, we don't learn that as
Yeah.
an undergrad in engineering. I think especially in like biomedical, mechanical, these sort of fields. But I think they can be really valuable skills for engineers.
Hmm.
What do you think you got from that?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And there's just so many different types of softwares and different types of applications that I had never understood how a company like Edwards or any big company really sets up those kinds of systems, because you take them so for granted, really. Like whenever you open your computer at work, all these applications are just there and you log in and you use it and you do it. But the complexities of how licensing works and how those corporate accounts get set up, like even USC's email system and USC's Google Drive system is something that is so nice and so easy to use and very convenient. But how did USC set that up in the first place? And every company has to go through that process. It's not necessarily always, I think it usually falls kind of under the realm of IT and information technology in general, goes through that process. But I think some of the biggest takeaways I got from it was that a familiarity with it and appreciation for it just makes you that much better of an engineer and a user. And it also makes me understand hey, there's better softwares we could be using for this, or hey, there's better applications we could be using for this. There's more efficient ways to do this. It was also a very, very good exercise in project management, which I think is also a skill that we don't really learn in college either, just because you work in group projects, but the nuances of managing deadlines and timelines that are not as concrete as, hey, you have your like first senior design iteration due in 2 weeks. Like that is something that is very concrete and is not going to change. But with working in a company and working with something as delicate as a company spinoff or a corporate spinoff, basically, there's deadlines that are going to get moved up, moved back, changed. Scope is going to change massively. So many different things are going to be thrown at you. And the skill set of just being able to project manage that and handle that and understand, okay, if we need to move this timeline up by a week, what do we need to get done right now? What needs to get pushed? Like, how can we prioritize these tasks? Is something that I think I didn't really have before I went into this rotation. And it's something I can walk away saying, like, I feel pretty confident about my skills in that area.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so I guess taking a step back from kind of like what you're doing now, when you reflect back on your time at USC, were there any like major valuable takeaways or something like that? Like from your 4 years at USC, what do you think matters the most for you now?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I think one of the things that I picked up at USC that has been instrumental to sort of my success in the rotational program and just in working in general has been the idea of adaptability and learning really quickly. I think USC, with its sort of course structure and the way that a lot of the classes later on are more project-based, things like that, like you end up picking up a lot of skills and you have to learn them pretty quickly. And in the real world, that's very much the case. There's a lot of different tools and procedures and things that you learn that are very industry specific, but you need to learn them quickly. And I think that's something that I definitely took away from USC. Being able to just talk to any kind of person, I think, is also a skill. That's not necessarily a technical one from USC, but you interact with so many different types of people on campus in your classes, outside of them, in clubs and just navigating like research labs and all sorts of different things. You learn how to talk to people, how to be very resourceful, how to pull and like understand like, hey, oh yeah, I need to do this one thing. I remember talking to this person about that a little while ago. Maybe they have an idea, and just doing that. I think that's a skill I didn't have in high school. I think that's a skill I definitely picked up in college, and it's helped me a lot in the workplace because there's so many ways that people can help you if you just ask them, and previous conversations and being able to network effectively helps a lot. I think another thing too, just in terms of technical skills, there's been a ton of classes that I've actually been able to pull information from and use that in my work. Like right now we were doing a study with blood. We were running blood through a simulated vasculature system, and it's a lot of mass flow analysis. So it's like a lot of things that you're literally picking up from school. And I didn't learn SolidWorks at USC, but we have a SolidWorks class, and I've used SolidWorks all the time at work. I've had to learn it at work, but that's something that I know a lot of my friends with a mechanical emphasis did, and it helps so much in the workplace. People use LabVIEW here. Like there's so MATLAB, like all of those things come up. So a lot of the technical skills that were built into the curriculum have definitely come up as well.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. Although
Yeah.
some of my mass flow skills might need to be brushed up.
It's okay. The good news with working in a medical device company is that you're only using blood, saline, water, and some other very similar concentrated fluids. So once you know your constants for those, you're fine.
So then I guess just like outside of work and school, I guess what are you up to generally, but also I think maybe less relevant for high school seniors, but definitely relevant for me as a senior. I think all of us are not scared to graduate, but like school, obviously you have like a network of friends, and we don't really have to make like friends outside of school until we graduate. What has that been like, just socially and kind of
Yeah.
positive way?
No, that's a super good question, and definitely one that I think one of the few benefits of the pandemic is that everyone is so comfortable with remote technology and like video chatting and FaceTiming and stuff now that it's super easy to actually reach out to friends that are farther away. Because I know in the beginning when I first graduated, I was talking a lot to my friends that stayed in LA because I was in Orange County, just about 45 minutes south. But a lot of my friends in LA, I could just drive up and hang out with them over the weekends, and that was no problem. But my friends that moved further away, it was definitely much more sort of planned and scheduled to be able to keep up with them. But now with the way that things have been, it's so much easier to just reach out and say like, hey, do you want to Zoom sometime? Like, hey, do you want to play some games? Hey, let's like meet up as a group. And that's really cool too, because sometimes like me and a couple of my friends are in LA, but a couple of other friends in our friend group live on the East Coast or like up in Washington or something. So we can bring everyone together as a group, which is really, really nice. One of the benefits that I had after graduation with Edwards, specifically as a company, is that we started in a cohort of new hires. So there was me and 25 other people or so that started at the same time that had also just graduated from college. So that was also kind of like a built-in friend group right out the gate, which was really nice. It was very much freshman year of college at first, where we would like text each other and be like, oh, who's getting lunch right now? Like all these kinds of things. And then everyone sort of lives together in kind of pods as well. So that was a really easy way to make friends. And I think making friends at work is very common for people our age too, because more and more of these companies are doing these sort of more structured new hire, new grad programs, which helps a lot. I think it's an interesting case study because I've been out of school for just over 18 or 19 months. And of that, like 9 or 10 have been pandemic. So it's like half and half kind of. But I do feel like my friendships with people since USC have gotten stronger, if anything. I think the groups have gotten a little smaller, but like you find yourself reaching out to some people a lot, and those are the friendships that end up growing stronger. And like those are the people that I've been talking to a lot over the course of the pandemic, and I'm sure I will keep talking to. So it's really fun. Post-grad life is super fun, honestly. I will say it's very nice to have a consistent paycheck, like the ability to go and fly and see people if you want to, not now, but in general, and be able to plan camping trips. It's also awesome that, you know, like for the most part, work stops after you leave the office. So your weekends are actually weekends, and like you can actually do things and like go camping without feeling guilty about not finishing your homework and like all these things like that. It opens up your schedule to fit in so many different things that you actually really want to be doing with your time, which is cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah,
so much, Rhea. I really
of
enjoyed
course.
chatting with you, and I'm glad
Yeah.
to hear all the amazing things you're doing.
Aw, thanks.
Awesome. Well, yeah, big thanks to Rhea for making time out of her day, and yeah, thanks to everyone for helping us make it to 200.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here is to another 100, and I can't wait to see what we're gonna do and how we're gonna change things up and also maintain consistency. So I'm so thankful to everyone again. I hope you all are staying safe, keeping healthy, keeping well as we kind of get through this winter as best we possibly can. And I hope that we will see as many of you as possible as soon as it is safe to do so. So thank you so much, everybody. Bye bye for now.